Welcome to the Big Fat Gay Podcast, where we like to talk about the things that are weighing on our minds. I am Don Marshall. I'm a big chubby guy living here in Hollywood, and I am your dwarven cleric of healing today.
Dan is so screwed on this one.
Says you.
Let's do some patters so that Dan can have some time to think up what he's going to say.
I'll get it. I'll do something. It'll be fast. Hello, my name is Dan Oliverio, an author, public speaker, and chubby chaser, and I am a gallant bard. I don't know what that means, but I figure I am one.
I'd see it.
I could see you like gallivanting about. Yes. Oh, I often gallivant.
I'm Trevor Keystone. I am a super chub living here in West Hollywood, and I am a mimic disguised as a delicious pie.
Yummy. And I am Michael. I'm a chaser, and I am the anthropomorphic hedgehog sitting on the shoulder of the warrior orc, telling him what to do, but not actually doing anything myself.
I love.
I should have picked
the
that
image of Michael as a little hedgehog. Good
Saturday morning to you and to everybody out there. Well, Wednesday morning. This is live, isn't it? I just watched a video on YouTube about blood spatter analysis, and it was fucking fascinating.
It reminds me of the Dexter promo.
It kind of was. They had a whole like plastic room set up, and he put a bunch of blood on a board and then hit it with a hammer, and just went poof everywhere.
It is the Christmas season.
Yeah.
Yay, Merry Christmas, everybody.
Everything's red and white.
I'm just picturing somebody in a big white plastic covered room with jars of blood everywhere singing, "It's the most wonderful time of the year." Smash, smash,
smash, smash, smash. This is how we celebrate here on the Big Fat Gay Podcast.
Yeah. It's not mayhem, it's Mother Christmas would be ham. so proud.
I mean, there is a tradition of telling scary stories around Christmas time.
Horror movies like I'll Be Home for Christmas.
And Godmothered.
Yes,
and Godmothered.
Michael, diving right on in.
Yes, no segue for you. We talked earlier this year when we did our Disney Fat Disney Characters episode about a movie that Disney was producing called Godmothered, which focuses on the fairy godmother as the main character. And they made this fast. Is anyone else surprised by how quickly this came out? It just came out.
I'm shocked, and also the trailer came out, I think it was last month, and it's like, oh, it's also a Christmas movie, because why not? Which I was saying to Dan this morning, I feel like a Christmas movie is in a different category of movie where it's like the stakes are lower in terms of I don't expect a Christmas movie to be good.
Yeah,
sure,
because it's
really
different. It follows different rules.
Hard.
Well, and I think the reason we're talking about this is because it's basically a pretty young fat girl in the lead as the I guess the earlier incarnation of the fairy godmother, who grows up to become maybe Cinderella's fairy godmother or any number of fairy godmothers in her old age, because we see her old, in those movies.
She's played by Jillian Bell, who is definitely not a thin actress. I mean, I think you could, I guess Hollywood fat is that the best way to, and she gets the starring role as the fairy godmother, who basically gets sent out of the the magical fairy tale world into the real world to help who she thinks is a young girl in need of a fairy godmother, and who is in fact actually a full-grown woman with lots of real-world problems.
Because she seems to have gotten there a bit late, I guess is the implication.
Yes.
My fear is that this is going to be another film in which the fat person is asexual and incompetent. But it's a Christmas movie, so it's heartwarming and lovely. And as I was saying to Trevor, you can't have everything, I guess. You do have a fat person in the lead. Take it and be grateful.
It looked cute. I didn't really have any strong reactions to the trailer one way or the other. It just looked like a cute, sort of fluffy Disney movie. I'm sure it fits well for Christmas.
I thought the lines were really funny that I heard in the preview. I would watch it.
We were going to watch it last night, But Mandalorian won out. So Don was saying the same thing happened to him.
But if you would like to check out Godmothered, it is on Disney Plus right now. And at least one of us will try and watch that.
I mean, we're caught up with The Mandalorian, so now
we can watch it.
Well, further into the world of fat representation in movies, and this is this is kind of a mixed thing. So the film adaptation of The Prom is coming out soon, and there's been a lot of controversy around James Cordon's portrayal of the gay character.
Oh, I wouldn't say controversy. He is getting hammered, poor boy.
Yeah.
And it is consistent. It is like universal backlash among critics.
And I, so much so that I can't find any tape of him doing what they claim he's doing because it's not out yet. And then I went back and I looked at the stage musical and looking at the character and how it was played there. And, the character says of himself, he's as gay as a bucket of wigs. So and some of the assassinations of James Cordon's performance are more nuanced than others. Some people are complaining that it's not that it's so gay, it's that because he's straight, he can't fill that form. He doesn't have the inherent knowledge of being gay and of being that kind of person. Some people just say he's the poor man's miscast and he had no chance of doing this well, which I think is probably the most accurate. I don't know. What do you guys think?
It's that age-old problem of like, at what point do you accept that an actor is an actor who's meant to play things other than who they are, or at what point do you have to say no, but we still need the representation first, and then we can get into, anyone can play anyone. I don't know. I haven't seen it. I wish
that's the problem. Yeah, we haven't seen
how it comes out. I don't have a really clear direction on this one because I like to think that in a perfect world you can cast a straight actor in a gay part and like nobody should care. But
and vice versa.
Is that not where we are yet?
Well, and I wonder, like when I look at the stage musical, it's the actor is gay and he plays it gay. Is it over the top gay? I don't know. Yes, but I wonder if the argument here is one of the arguments that, well, you can be over the top flamboyant gay as long as you're gay. And I also wonder, and just because it's that part of that paranoia, is he getting this kind of shit because as a fat man, it doesn't look quite gay? Is that interfering with people's perception of it, even if unconsciously?
Another way to phrase that, or at least another angle on that exact sentiment is, if all the bitchy queens out there who are judging his performance were attracted to him, would they be judging him differently?
Exactly.
I mean, so one thing, like when they first I think the first thing they released was the poster showing the cast and then the trailer, and then all this controversy came out. And I mean, I was surprised they cast James Corden, but also not, because it's like, I mean, they're going for names. It's Ryan Murphy's
musical theater male in the biz right now.
Yeah.
And it's Ryan Murphy's Netflix's adaptation of The Prom.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that they would cast him over Nathan Lane, because Nathan Lane has a huge career. He's wonderful. He's talented. But I think Gen Z probably doesn't really know Nathan Lane as well as James Corden. I mean, there was a whole thing. Poor Christopher Rosa wrote an article for Teen Vogue that went viral because it was saying like, oh my God, Catherine O'Hara from Schitt's Creek is the mom in Home Alone.
Oh my God, really?
And it was all of these, there was a lot of, youth on Twitter discovering this for the first time, whereas, millennials, Gen X, and I don't know, maybe some less terrible boomers we're all like, yes, this is a thing that happens.
Well, I
Actors
just want to
have careers.
Well, I think the internet's going to friggin' blow up when they discover that Han Solo is also Indiana Jones.
Wait, what?
The internet's going to lose their mind.
We just blew some heads open right now.
I'll be honest though, I don't think that it's just an attraction thing that's getting him pulled over the coals. So when the sexuality of the character is the joke, right? As the way a straight person tends to play that sort of femmy swishy thing, it lacks a complexity than say, well, like when Billy Porter does it, right? Mm-hmm. You bring someone in because they will put a life behind the eyes of that character.
Yes,
that a straight person generally cannot. You know, there are a couple people that I've seen succeed in doing that. Like the person I always hold up as the example of the straight actor that nails the gay part, Michael C. Hall in 6 Feet Under, plays this. There's a complicated demeanor he puts off of someone who is closeted but gay through most of the series, then comes out through the arc. There's a subtlety to it that most straight actors will never catch.
There's a suggestion in this article we're referring to on IndieWire about the prom. Somebody asks, was Titus Burgess busy? Among several other suggestions of people to play the part. I think that would have been fantastic. I don't know if
once I read that, I'm like, I was instantly angry because I hadn't been like, why not Titus Burgess? Like I hadn't connected those dots. And once they were connected for me, it's like, yes.
Yeah. So the next thing, I think this is probably one of the most interesting things I've come across in a while.
Think I found this a while ago, but I thought it was good to bring up because Hanukkah starts on Friday. And I think it is important. Take it, Michael.
So we have an article that Trevor found, which I was initially intending to just sort of skim so I could talk about it. And I just got sucked in. It's on Tablet called Fat Liberation's Jewish Past and Future by Marissa Nathan Gerson. And it is a look and also a series of interviews at several different people in the fat liberation movement from some Jewish perspectives and the Jewish roots in fat liberation, but also like dropping some absolute truth bombs along the way, things that I had just never considered or never connected the dots for, like digging into a lot of the really interesting history in fat liberation and how it's changed over the decades from its origins in the civil rights movement and in racism and in just all of these intersectional roots that I hadn't fully connected the dots for, even as long as we've been doing this show. And it is just fascinating from the anecdotes that she gets, people talking about their stories. And actually there was one particular one, this woman, I'm going to butcher her name, I'm sure. I think her name's Kaya Milstein, something like that. Had an anecdote about growing up. I know this stuff happens, but it blew my mind. She said, it hit home at 15 and a half when I announced I was ready to be married, and my father started looking for, I don't know Hebrew, but shidduchim for me. Suddenly my weight became a huge problem. The on-paper stats they offered potential suitors included height and weight became a huge sticking point. You have to lose weight, my father told me. And I didn't have a scale, so he told me to go to the UPS store and to get weighed on a package scale. I could keep going, but I won't. But like, these are the people who then took that origin and turned it into working in the fat liberation movement. So turns out into but it just...
What I particularly love about the article is it, because of the source, it also talks about Judaism and the spiritual practice and that of healing and the idea that is very much part of my work of healing the self to heal the world. That you know, the first universe you're dealing with is your own and you. And by coming to terms with what's happened to you and rising above that, you can then take that out into the world. And I thought that was a really, they don't say it that way, of course, but I thought that was a really beautiful intersection that I've never heard before of the idea of fat liberation with spiritualism.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. And it's kind of a crash course in a lot of ways for the if you just want some really well constructed, at least as far as I can tell, bullet points about how fat liberation has evolved over the last like 60 years. it really hits a lot of those points and wraps them into this storyline they have with the people they talk to.
Yeah, it's a wonderfully constructed piece, so definitely check it out.
Yeah.
But it's no segue for you because I can give you a
segue if you want one.
Okay.
Yes, do it, Dan.
Please,
so
name that segue.
One of the great things about this article is that it talks about people from backgrounds you wouldn't have suspected before, you wouldn't think of maybe as fat liberation within, let's say, the Orthodox community and things like that. And part of our Lizzo Watch this episode is talking about people who are, Lizzo is not the only person doing fat liberation and body positivity. In fact, Refinery 29 has a whole article about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So that means it's Lizzo Watch.
2020.
Yay!
One of the last ones.
Yeah. And actually, so Lizzo is actually kind of like, I think, hibernating a bit, well deserved. But there is still, everyone is kind of doing their like year-end wrap-ups, and Lizzo is hitting some major ones. She was in Insider's 15 Celebrities Who Had the Best Style of 2020. I don't think she was. I don't think they really numbered them. I think they just kind of were giving people shout outs. But Lizzo was there, well deserved. And kind of they specifically showed her vote dress.
Yes,
which is by Kristen Siriano, champion of the fat native clothing. I mean, I'm looking at the dress again, and I just love it. It's so.
And let's not forget, by the way, the matchbook-sized purse that shocked the world.
Yes.
I mean, she is setting trends everywhere she goes.
Yes.
Is that a purse or a lipstick?
It's both. But blowing minds, including on TikTok.
Oh, yeah.
Which TikTok also kind of released their year-end trends. And Lizzo was number 3 in the most, I don't know if it was followed or received most engagement of celebrities on TikTok.
Yeah, top A-list celebrities.
Yes.
Which is awesome. And we've definitely shared some of the stuff that she's done on TikTok, but
I want to meet the person who curates the A list. And do they also curate the B list, or is that a separate person?
No, it's a different you can't mix together your.
It's too much power. And then finally, I shared an article, the article that Dan mentioned from Refinery 29, saying the title is "We Cannot Keep Letting Lizzo Do the Heavy Lifting, Reframing the Fat Body," and it's wonderful. It's a wonderful piece, and I think also, Lizzo kind of talked about this in her David Letterman thing that she. Kind of fell into this because she's fat and political. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to, part of the podcast and part of even the Lizzo Watch segment is to kind of, to see what she's doing and take from that and follow that and emulate that.
And take inspiration from it.
Yeah. Well, it's true because all of her fat activism is really stuff that anybody can do. It's just that she has a whole lot more people watching her do it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She does it boldly.
Yeah. You can twerk on TikTok. You can have a tiny purse on the internet. You can, there's a lot of stuff you can do. It's not something that you need $1 million and a stylist to accomplish.
This is true. And we see people doing it, but in the article, but there's more to it. It's not just about Lizzo.
Yeah.
That's the point.
There's a lot of other really cool aspects to this interview. But she does talk about how it's easier to watch somebody like Lizzo taking these bold steps and to cheer them on than it is to actually, like if you see Lizzo talking to herself in the mirror and praising herself, you can cheer her on, but also try and find ways to do that for yourself as well. Like, what do you say to yourself when you look in the mirror? And to actually put into action the things that you appreciate in somebody like Lizzo.
I feel like Lizzo, there's got to be some parallels here to her being the first out person in Hollywood as far as being fat.
Definitely.
Like there have always been fat actors. There always have been. But once they reach a certain level in their career, they get defatted by sort of the way the public looks at them. Like they're right. Now acceptable. Like Roseanne, Melissa McCarthy, a lot of them people, and John Goodman, people know they're fat, But it's sort of like what gay people used to be like in Hollywood. Like, we know they're gay, we just don't talk about it for that one because they've gotten to a point where it doesn't matter anymore.
Well, when their fame eclipses people's nastiness about being impolite about their size, you know.
So one of the things I like about this article before we move on is it's an interview with Grace Barber Plenty, excuse me, who's a film curator, and she put together this basically programmed a short film screening that celebrates the fat form, and including a live performance by a fat pole dancer afterwards, which is awesome and very much, I think, on brand for Lizzo fans.
I've never seen anyone dance on top of a Polish person.
Well, I mean, isn't Trevor?
Let me say, I have done some dancing on top of some poles.
Some rods, some poles, lots of
Okay. And before we move on to our main subject for today, we had a request for the chasers in the audience. Dan, you had the most succinct way to put this. I'm going to let you say it.
Yeah, we've had some interest from our listeners about chasers, and the question comes, so for our chaser listeners, what was it like for you? We'd love to hear from you. Contact us, reach out on social media. What was it like for you growing up chaser? Or are there problems you still face today being a chaser that, you recognize from childhood, or maybe there's new problems, but just stuff you'd like to talk about or things that you'd like to share as something you feel is unique to your being a chaser?
Yeah. We're going to basically take some of the stories or all of the stories that we hear from you guys over the next couple of weeks and talk about them. I mean, Dan and I have talked a lot about our experience as chasers, but I think it would be really fun to get a collective as well and to see what the people out there in other parts of the world are going through as well. So we'd love to hear from you. We'll have the social media at the end if you don't know how to reach out to us. Big Fat Gay Pod is the short answer.
Yes.
But let's get into our main subject for today. Trevor, I'm going to throw this to you because I think you're going to say this maybe better than I would, because I'm going to get angry.
Yeah. So there's two things that kind of prompted this idea for the topic. And the first was the New York Times had an article called Are Kidfluencers Making Our Kids Fat? And basically the article is looking at child influencers on YouTube promoting childhood obesity by, like, one of the examples was like, there's a McDonald's play set where it's like, if your kid wants to imagine they work at McDonald's, which there's a whole lot going on there that's another show to unpack, a McDonald's play set and capitalism and all of that, which is, I mean, this
Baby's
is nothing
first
new.
wage slave job.
Yeah. This whole concept of the devil du jour trying to make your kids fat. I mean, in the past, we've seen it be cartoons, breakfast cereals. McDonald's doesn't serve children soda anymore because big soda is trying to make your kids fat. But then a couple weeks later, there was a wonderful piece by your fat friend, aka Aubrey Gordon, called "Leave Fat Kids Alone."
Yes,
it's an amazing piece, and it's basically just kind of talking about this thing that people think is good because we're always trying to protect the children, but how much harm that does to children.
She starts the article with a really powerful anecdote, which I kind of want to read so we can take it as a jumping off point. Because when I was reading the Kidfluencers article, on a base level, I was like, okay, I mean, I get how people are connecting the dots here as far as like, oh, this very young child, like I think 8-year-old, somewhere around an 8-year-old boy is like pretending to serve McDonald's and then blah, blah, blah.
Should I give a little background to that? Because I think it might be helpful here before you contrast.
Yeah, if you want to.
Because for people who haven't read the New York Times, the Kidfluencers piece, it's more than just, oh, fat kids are eating food on video. It's not that. It's actually more about how these Kidfluencers, like any influencers, are being pitched and paid to endorse products that other kids might enjoy playing with, like a McDonald's play set in which your child can be a cashier at McDonald's and other stuff. And a lot of this, or like, boy, Doritos would like to, have a presence there. And so it's sort of this mixture of capitalism and diet that the childhood obesity folks have chosen to jump up and down on the diet part, whereas other people might jump up and down on the capitalism part, trying to turn children into, good young consumers and aspire to minimum wage jobs that will never support them.
I think a side element of this also is that YouTube does not allow for this kind of ad revenue to come through in their actual ads for videos. So this is a workaround that major companies like McDonald's, Hasbro, whatever, have found to get their advertisements into these videos without placing ads that YouTube doesn't allow, which I think is a related but also separate issue.
Yes.
It's insidious is what I'm getting at.
And anytime you put something out for kids below a certain age, it's problematic because they don't understand the concept of advertising yet. They just see whatever put in front of them as absolute truth.
I know, that's the benefit, don't you see, Don? That's what the companies have going for them.
So the initial New York Times article about kidfluencers felt fairly, neutrally presented until I started reading Your Fat Friends article, which starts with an anecdote. She says, I was in 4th grade sitting in a doctor's office the first time my face flushed with shame. I had just learned overweight. Apparently the pediatrician said to her, it's probably from eating all that pizza and ice cream. It tastes good, doesn't it? But it makes your body big and fat. Just imagine that your body is made out of clay. If you can just stay the same weight as you grow, you'll stretch out. And once you grow up, you'll be thin and beautiful. Won't that be great? And breaking down what that kind of a message does to a kid where on the one hand, people love to talk about how easily influenced kids are, but at the same time, they love to dismiss the kind of impact, the kind of emotional and psychological impact that saying things like that will have on a child. It's like speaking out of one side of your mouth. Like, okay, so you're saying that kids are so easily influenced by seeing this ad, this hidden ad about McDonald's, and yet you're not also copping to the fact that if you tell kids how shameful it is to be fat, that it's going to damage them. It's going to hurt them. It's going to leave these long-lasting scars because kids are easily influenced and kids are sensitive. They're extremely sensitive.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant, Michael. That's a really great way to see it.
I mean, I remember the first time, my pediatrician kind of awkwardly gave me, the weight talk and like showing me my growth chart and like, oh, well, you're still in this percentile and this this trend is going and it's, this isn't a good thing. But like, I am a literal child. I have no idea why, like looking at this chart, like, I mean,
is he there to take responsibility for the fact that you hate math and percentiles? Yes. No, he's not.
No, but just like looking at this chart, like generally when a chart is like going up, it's like, I'm like, this seems like a good thing, maybe. Like
capitalism
explains so much.
Capitalism teaches us that anything that goes up is good.
Yeah. And just like this, this very strange, like, trying to have a conversation with a child that like you shouldn't be having. He did not know how to have.
Well, that's because there's no good way to have the conversation that your body is wrong and you should fix it.
And especially at that age, there's no way to prep yourself for that conversation. Like now when I go to the doctor's office, I'm usually ready to brace myself for some sideline fat thing when I'm going in. So now I'm ready. Now I'm prepared. I am protected. At that age, you're completely permeable to this stuff, and it can land hard. For Trevor, you can remember the first time. I can't. That's how innate it was to me. I was always a fat kid. It was always something that was being brought up as a negative trait, And I think for me, and I'm not going to say this is a universal experience for all gay chubby guys that were chubby young, but I'm sure Dan can get into the concept of the good boy syndrome. That sits on most gay men comes from the fact that they feel like at a young age, when you hear that much casual homophobia, and it's very clear that being gay is simply an innately bad thing from your parents, you begin to believe that love is not a constant, that if they find out you're gay, that love can be taken away and that you can be expulsed. That's so you learn to hide that. But if that's the case for gay people, imagine what it's like being fat. That is the flaw in you. That is the thing that makes you less than. And that is the thing that makes your love endangered from your parents and those around you. Because in a world of absolutes, you're good or bad, and fat is bad.
Mm-hmm. It's so fascinating and frustrating to me how people who love to talk about health so frequently ignore or discount what your emotional health does to your physical health. And what happens when a kid is being told so many things that make them feel awful, that make them depressed, that give them psychological battles to fight that they never had beforehand for the rest of their teenage years, or for the rest of their 20s. And what impact does that have on your health? What impact does that have on your stress levels, which are hard to quantify, but have very real impacts on health and mortality? And people love to talk about things that they think they can measure, but the truth is that, yes, kids are sponges, but not just for food and not just for what you perceive to be like the cause of their unhealthfulness. It's so much deeper than that. And if you want to, like, you can't cherry pick the ways in which you can influence a kid's health. Like it's about more than that. And
as a professional doctor with a clipboard and some charts, I disagree, Michael, because if you look at these charts,
I just like the shiny thing you wear on your forehead. I just think that's neat.
Well, that's for hypnotism purposes.
Yeah.
No, but I think Michael, you really hit it when you say that, like, oh my God, if my child sees a McDonald's commercial, it'll scar them for life and lead them to, immobility because they'll get so fat. But when I tell them that, they're worthless and fat and they should really shape up, they're just being thin-skinned if they take offense at that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, you're trying to toughen them up and get them to a better place. It's like by scarring them forever.
Well, and there's a lot of people, and they're usually people who have been scarred, who will attest to how much that worked for them, which is really eerie. And you can hear this all the way from the people who say, well, my father took a belt to me and it only made me a better person. And you hear it from Henry Cavill, who in an interview said, like, this agent told me that I was getting kind of chunky, and I'm really glad he said it so I could lose weight.
Yeah. Yeah, he has said that.
And it's this idea that that abuse is useful for keeping people in line. You hear it from child abusers. You hear it from abusers of women, that so-and-so deserves it, so-and-so needs it. And then you have the people who fall victim to that saying, yes, we did deserve it. We did need it.
Well, I think it's similar to what you say, Dan, about like when a fat person loses weight and they love that they're thin, but a lot of times it's at least partially because they are being treated differently by the rest of the world.
Absolutely.
It's that idea that, like,
yeah, and they're treating themselves differently.
Right. It's that idea that, like, if you're taking this abusive experience and turning it around into a way to make yourself feel better, it's just that you are overcoming your situation. Like, you have found pride in doing something to make yourself feel better, but that sort of has this false assumption that you had to start from a place of abuse, that you somehow had needed the abuse to be able to succeed. But what happens when you never got that abuse? Would you feel happier? Would you still be fine? And people just assume that it has to start from this awful place.
Not only people just assume, but it is the very premise. It is the guiding principle of a show like The Biggest Loser, where the abuse is necessary. It's part of the show. It's part of the premise that we must abuse these people so they can get right.
Okay, I'm depressed now. I was, but now I'm too depressed.
I think one of the things, like, so we see the people who say, oh, well, this abusive system worked for me, but we see far more where it doesn't work. And, they look at all of these things with, childhood obesity and how it affects the body, but they don't really do an in-depth analysis of how severe emotional and psychological trauma in conjunction with a higher body weight and a developing mind, a developing body the body going through these changes, chemical changes, the brain growing and wiring and rewiring and all of the, all of these things, which it's just kind of mind numbing to me that like, we don't like, there's so much focus in this area, but not really in these like areas within.
Yeah. Seemingly obvious places of study, or at least if they are being studied, it doesn't feel like it gets nearly the same headlines as something like kidfluences are making our children fat.
Yeah. Like the,
well, it's good clickbait.
The stress response of a child who, I don't like the word overweight, but for the, the sake, because we're talking about medically, the medical industry, a child who is overweight and just constantly in this stress response because, they wake up, they're getting harassment from their parents, they're getting harassment at school, they're dealing with whatever food issues are being ingrained in them at lunch. They go home, it starts again, they go to sleep. Just this cycle of when you are told you're wrong, you're living in this state that your body should not be. And we've seen, there's been studies that when the body is reacting to stress, it will store fat.
Yeah, but that's wrong of them. That's wrong of the body,
Yeah. If the body would just look at this chart in my hand.
Well, and it can create these long-term associations. Like for me, I was a fat kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my mom spent an awful lot of time looking at anything I would eat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like just even if she would usually say something, don't get me wrong, but even if I was able to eat something, she would watch it, and not so silently judge me for it, which gave me this really weird relationship with food where like it's a dirty thing. I should probably never eat anything is what my mind is always telling me. But at the same time, food is not only like an illicit joy, but in a world that I grew up in, it was a cardinal joy that I could control. It was the only thing that I had available to me that could give relief from some of those pressures. So as I grow up, it continues into this weird relationship with food I have. And the same thing with exercise. Exercise was never presented as something fun. It was presented as something I had to do because I was fat. So, so exercise to this day is a punishment,
It's funny that you mentioned the thing with your mom and the watching the food, because that instantly made me think of, so my mom had this thing with, I don't know if she was on some kind of, I feel like maybe she was on a diet at the time, but like she would always get the Pepperidge Farm frozen baguettes and have like baguette with dinner, but it was like her bread. And there was we all wanted this, little awful baguette, really. But there was a time she just snapped during dinner and she said, "I see you eyeing my bread." And I think I know my mom, her weight fluctuated throughout my childhood, and like normal people, but there was a big thing with like fluctuating weight, and I know she was like thinner at the time, so that's why I'm thinking, like, in looking back, I think there was like a diet thing going on at the time, but that like I don't know. I mean, obviously that stuck with me, and it like flashed back in this moment of thinking about having your food intake analyzed.
Trevor, do you want to share the pizza story or no?
Oh my God. Okay. So this is, so going off of my mom and carbs.
It just seems to fit.
She was telling me a story. This was actually like very, like maybe last year or the year before, like recent years, telling me a story about she was with extended family and they got pizza, and one of her cousins ate an entire pizza. And who does that? Eating an entire pizza? I mean, you think about doing it, but no one actually eats an entire pizza. I mean, you think about it.
I just love that admission of, well, of course everyone wants to, but you wouldn't let yourself.
Everyone wants to eat a pizza. You don't eat a pizza.
I mean, what would the neighbors say?
That really... I wonder if your mom ever like secretly ate the entire pizza.
Oh, I'm sure.
Well, The thing I always come back to is like, there are individual pizzas. Like
yes.
How big is a pizza? A calzone technically is an entire pizza that's been folded in half.
Let no one ever tell you what size pizza is a personal pizza. That is a personal pizza is a choice.
That's right. That small, medium, and large thing is just a ruse to get you to buy more pizza.
I have stuff that I kind of want to talk about, but I think it might actually fit better in our Chaser episode. So I'm going to save it for then.
Excellent.
Because I think that would be a better
So
time
what's
to
the
dig
best way that we can be allies to the younger fat children in our lives? How do we
buy them a pizza?
Yeah. Let them have the bread. Just
Let them eat cake.
Give them some of your terrible baguette. No, I mean, I think it is. There just needs, and I think, it's not, Dan knows I have a thing with the word better. We're getting better at looking at the impact we have on children, but there's still a lot of ways to go. And I think the way we start helping children is by working on the lingering trauma in adults who are raising these children, which Dan at Models of Pride spoke to parents of LGBTQIA plus youth. And I can't remember the exact, but do you want to talk about that?
I don't know that I remember what you're talking about.
So, but it was basically a mother talking about how she was raised in this environment where she has all of these issues with her body and her weight, and she's working through them so that she doesn't instill them in her child. And she knows that it's kind of this toxic relationship, like with her own body, is like leaking out into her kids a little, and working through it herself so she can help her kid work through it and try to break the cycle of this toxic body relationship.
Well, and some of the things that I would talk about with parents is that, but my kid is getting fat. They might be fat. My kid is fat, whatever it is. And my point is, there is absolutely nothing you're going to say to your child about their weight that's going to help them. Mm-hmm. The child knows they're fat because the world makes its business to tell them so. Your child already knows that being fat is bad, wrong, and unhealthy because the world works overtime to make sure they know that. Your voice will not make the difference one way or the other. So there's absolutely nothing you need to say on that score. What you need to look at is, what makes your child happy? What makes your child light up? If you serve that, you're going to have a great kid.
Yeah, I think just running with that, like understanding, I think it's so easy. People forget. It seems so quickly how we forget that kids are, by design, sponges for every tiny little detail. They are hyper sensitive to everything, things that we as adults completely ignore because we're used to it. We've been, accustomed to whatever it is that's going on. Everything for kids, this is all new. And the most innocuous thing can leave a lifelong impact on a kid because that's just how kids work. That's literally the way that they're designed, is to just be sponges and to take it all in. And you have to approach that kind of a life with empathy. You have to be able to communicate with them in a way that's going to encourage and support them. And I know that, I guess, the problem that Trevor is talking about is that I think a lot of adults don't even realize when they're not doing that. Like, they think that they're doing a good job because they have already experienced their own traumatizing events that shapes their way of interacting. And that's, I think you're right, Trevor. I think that's if you're in a situation where you're, mentoring or raising a kid, like looking at your own problems and trying always to be better yourself, so that you can be the best person you can be for that kid as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the last piece of advice that I would like to inject in there is that if you have a fat kid in your life, I think one of the best ways to help them is the same way that you would help any other kid, which is to foster agency and a sense of competence. Like, you can act, you can do these things, and you can excel at them. You can be good at them. And it doesn't have to be sports. It doesn't have to be weight loss oriented stuff. Giving somebody a place where they feel like they belong, giving somebody a place where they feel like I'm good at this, I can contribute something. Those are the best gifts you can give to any kid, including fat kids. And just don't think about in terms of like, how do I help them not become fat? Think in terms of how do I help them become a whole, complete person excited to be here.
You're here.
Yes.
Yay. Do we have anything else on childhood obesity? Now that I'm ready to go into the bathroom and slip my wrists.
I have to say, I get why kids like SpongeBob now. Because they're SpongeBob.
Oh. I was like, because they're held underwater? I don't understand.
That took me a moment.
Well,
do we have a tip today?
We have. Oh no!
Yeah, you got a whole year's worth of tips last week.
A whole bunch of tips. There was actually one, but I forgot what it was. I keep remembering it, like as I'm drifting off to sleep. I'm like, oh, we should talk about. And then but no tips, but a bit.
We do have a bit. So today, since we were talking about childhood obesity, I thought we would talk about some movies that feature larger children. So what I have done is I have come up with some really bad descriptions of movies that you all know that feature a fat child in some way.
Okay.
So for example, I would give you the movie description of slave owner sets death traps for children that he lures into his home with addictive substances. And I would be referring to Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Oh.
Okay, so we're going that direction.
I was going to say Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
All right.
Okay.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. A group of kids almost get murdered by Italians while trying to steal from a dead man and get saved by an abused child with Superman.
Buzz. I did it first.
Michael buzzed first.
Michael got it first.
The Goonies.
That is correct.
Yay.
The Goonies.
The Truffle Shuffle.
Can I just say, as a child growing up, I hated that movie as a child because of its portrayal of fat kids.
I felt wildly uncomfortable by the Truffle Shuffle.
Yeah,
like
it really
wildly uncomfortable.
It just made me squirm in all the worst ways. I hated that.
Yeah.
All right, our next movie. Children obsessed with a corpse fantasize about vomit-based vengeance stories.
Oh, Buzz.
Yes, Trevor.
Stand By Me.
That is correct.
Oh, interesting. I forgot I forgot the second half of that, but yes.
That is the thing that is seared into my memory, is that entire vomit sequence with the pie eating.
Yeah. I remember it now. I had the visuals are what lasted for me. Surprise, surprise.
I mean, it's rough, but I don't know. It's
all right.
Maybe the best vomit-based revenge sequence in a movie.
I don't know, Trevor. There's so many.
It's very
Can you really
memorable.
narrow it down to just one?
All right. Our next movie. Children plot against their government and execute elaborate musical numbers during a war with Canada.
Oh, Buzz.
Oh.
Michael?
Fuck, I'm going to remember the full title, though. It's the South Park movie, right? But there's a subtitle to it. It's...
I know the subtitle.
I wish people could see Michael bouncing up and down his chair right now. It's sort of adorable.
I just remember the game title, which is A Stick of Truth. Damn it. All right, pass.
Buzz,
Trevor.
South Park, bigger, longer, and uncut.
That is correct.
Damn
well
you, Trevor.
done.
I am dominating.
And it's weird. Like, Eric Cartman is such a, like, this, like, is he a terrible role model, or like, he's the flip side of that is he is he has no problem standing up for himself. which I admire.
I mean, I really like that he just doesn't give a crap about his weight, and he's just living his life. He has a terrible life, but he's just living it.
I mean, he's a terrible human being, but
he's a terrible
level
human
of self-confidence is something everyone could admire.
Well, I think what we're getting at is the American ideal of having no shame whatsoever.
Yeah, he would be a MAGA guy. All right,
that's exactly.
This is the hard one. I've got two more. This one's the hard one. Pig worshipping bullies break a pair of glasses while on an extended field trip.
Oh, I know it, but I can't think of the name.
Buzz.
Dan.
Buzz. Lord of the Flies.
That is
Yes.
correct.
Hey, Dan got one.
I got one.
I put that one in there just for Dan.
Yay.
Something old enough that I have a shot at.
It's easy to forget that there is a fat kid at the center of that story.
Oh, and he's the only character that doesn't have a name.
Yep.
But
he's also the only one that's sympathetic. All right. Our last one of the day. A stowaway on a flight that goes horribly awry meets a very friendly mutant with a voice box.
Why do I feel like I should know this?
A stowaway on a flight that goes horribly awry meets a very friendly mutant with a voice box. The flight that goes awry is not in what anyone would call a conventional vehicle.
I feel like I should know this. I'm just failing to connect the dots.
The very friendly mutant with a voice box. Not all mutants are human.
I kind of assumed they weren't.
The voice box part is what's throwing me. I don't know if I...
The last hint I'll throw out to this. The method by which the vehicle that flies is helium.
So it's not the tricycle in E.T.
Buzz?
Michael?
I don't think this is right, but James and the Giant Peach?
Nope.
I was going to say that.
All right. The final hint. If you're all ready, this one will blow it for you. I would want you to pay plenty of attention to this, but I can't help it. Squirrel!
Oh,
Buzz.
Up.
That's all of you. Yep. Stowaway on a flight that goes horribly awry meets a very friendly mutant with a voice box. Up.
The voice box part threw me. Yeah. I knew that I knew it. I just forgot that he has that collar on.
Yep.
Damn it.
I was convinced I didn't know it, but then I did.
So I got one. You knew all of these.
Well, how did you do at home? Did you win?
Did you lose?
Do you have a really bad movie description you'd like to share with other listeners?
Yeah.
There's a way that you can do that.
How could they do
Well, you should follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Big Fat Gay Pod. We're on Facebook as the Big Fat Gay Podcast. Leave us 5 stars there. Leave us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher.
Mm-hmm.
And leave us more reviews. We've kind of hit a little. You leave a review. Gosh darn it.
Yeah,
I need more.
We haven't gotten a review in a long time.
Yeah,
it's sad.
The last one's a puppy emoji. Anyway, see all the lovely stuff we talked about here at www.bigfatgaypod.com.
Yeah.
Happy Hanukkah. Maybe you're listening as you're lighting your first candle
on the menorah,
and you look outside, and it's Don, and he's waving, and then something drops down on top of him. And it's Michael. So
look out, Don.
It's raining, Michael. Hallelujah. It's raining, Michael.
Amen. Okay, that's a wrap on childhood obesity.
That's a series wrap on Don. He's now dead.
I'm just glad that we had the opportunity to solve childhood obesity.
Yes.
Yay, good job.
We've done some good
everybody.
work.